Alright, so this car is in for a supercharger and a few other things, but I want to do some TLC things under here. I'm just going to give you a quick heads up what we're going to do. You see these bolts here? They have been changed. They're not the best looking. We're going to change those. Of course, the crossbar has to come off for the supercharger. The supercharger is going to be sitting right there. A few of the things I think we're going to do for him. This is going to get Hondata, so we have to change that valve cover. We have an absolute mint valve cover that we're going to put on there in exchange for that one. That battery tie, it's not the best looking battery tie. I think we'll change that. A few of the little LHT TLC items. Of course, it's getting an LHT radiator. Might refinish those as well. A few of the things I think we're going to do. So now we've got the car in the air. You can see where somebody has modified this exhaust. They've probably repaired it, but it's crushed bent, just awful looking pipe. I mean, you can see it's a good old MIG weld right there, and then it's crushed galvanized pipe. We'll talk to him about that. I don't want to keep nickel and diming people. I mean, even though a lot of people say, hey, why you got the car, do anything you want, but you hate to just, you know, just keep adding stuff to the list. Talking of adding stuff to the list, I'm gonna do a quick demo on that transmission, George. Oh, that. Yeah, they're supposed to be holding the transmission down. So they're broken. Just an idea what the bolts look like. Obviously, these are the new ones. These are the old ones. You can see it's actually got a much deeper socket compared to these. So clutch assembly, we have to put a master cylinder in this, and George noticed it was jumped, and that's because
the pin was gone.
The button is missing. Oh. That's my timer going off to remember to do something. Right, so rather than leaving it the way it was, which is slightly dangerous, because if you was to hit the key and not have the clutch down, the car would take off if it's in gear. So may as well replace this button, as you see. One of our local customers, he brought us this muffler from Stainless Bros, wants to put a slash cut on it, and then this bracket here for his reservoir, or his windshield washer, probably the reservoir, wants that cutting down right there. You see that? So it's that time again. It's time for lunch, and it's funny, I put a video up where I went to Five Guys. Remember I got to Five Guys, we bought like 2 burgers, 2 drinks, and 1 fries. And it was like $450 or something, and I kind of complained, and some guy goes, "Why, it must be nice, you ask your employee what he wants for lunch, and then you complain about how much money it is." Thank you, YouTube. Thank you. I think we're going on 11 months since I've been buying us lunch. But no, it's one of those things, I just want to make sure that we don't have to worry about food. It sounds stupid, but when you're working all day, your life revolves around lunch. What are we doing for lunch? Who's going to get lunch? How much is lunch going to be? Is it going to be $6? Is it going to be 12? So I think I showed you this earlier. I don't remember. I'll show you it anyway. Well, the car had a bit of a fender bender, and it looks like somebody fixed this side and fixed it just awful without putting it, without trying to sugarcoat it. It's terrible. This is crushed bent. It's a different diameter. You can see actually how much different it is there. This looks like 2.5 and it's slightly swedged out, and then this looks like it's maybe 2 1/4. So somebody had to really use a lot of welding skills there, which means when you weld and you press the button, you hold it down for a long time and you don't move a whole lot. Well, you gotta have those. That's a telltale sign that it was welded. So somebody has done a real good job here and then went, oh, the gap's getting bigger, it's getting bigger. I can almost be a fly on the wall and see how that went down. And then look at this crushed bent. So I had to call up the customer and say, hey, I know we quoted you this, but now it's going to go up to this. If you've watched our videos, you'll know a lot of the time we just eat a lot of the little things because it's sometimes better than getting paid. Just giving something away sometimes comes back in return. So What we're going to do is we're going to cut this section off here and go ahead and fix just that part. I don't want to build him a whole new section because this part isn't bad. There is a kink back here, right there. It's not too bad. This is a good 2.5 inch, so a dual 2.5 inch is going to hold all the power this thing's ever going to make. It's going to run this exhaust. He's got his catalytic converter on there, which we're still going to put back on. So the cat is going to be the restriction. If anything, this exhaust will be fine. So we're just going to go ahead and replace that with a nicer piece. Forgot to put these in the fridge earlier, and we're cutting close to time. So let's go ahead and do the old freezer-rooney right here. Okay, so I gotta tell you, this is probably one of the best Sawzalls ever. This is the Milwaukee. We're not endorsing it, just telling you what we use. This is a really good machine, but I don't know what you would use for blades, but whatever blade we put in it, we're using the Milwaukee brand right here. It seems like a one-time shot. It's like a disposable blade. If you cut through a piece of 2.5 inch pipe, that's a one blade cut. What is it about these blades? If you guys use these, if you know of a better blade for, you know, cutting mild steel, stainless steel, that kind of thing, let me know, because I feel like I spend a fortune on Milwaukee blades and they're just not that good. So I just wanted to make a dedication to some of you welders out here. When I say welders, I mean the guy using the welding torch. Look at that. That is beautiful. You couldn't train a slug to lay that still. Now we have a 2.5 inch hole back in the muffler. See that? That is how you make a 2.5 inch hole fit with a 2.25 bit of pipe. Look at that. That is beautiful. Alright, so this is the idle air control valve. One of the things the customer was saying is the car has a habit of stalling and not holding its idle. Well, this is sometimes the culprit. It gets dirt in there. This is an electric motor, basically. It just rocks it back and forth. This side here is almost like a little cup, and it allows air to travel from one side to the other. This has water going through it, but basically it either allows air to cross here or it doesn't. So this in here will often stick, and of course over time the motor gets kind of lazy, so it doesn't operate quite as fast, and it will sometimes cause it to stall or just have a bad idle. One of the things you can do is take it apart. You know, to take these two little Torx heads out of here, remove the motor, then you can actually access this and see if it's clean. If not, I'll show you a way to clean it. Okay, so once you take this apart, you can see this guy moving in here. You see that? Well, this is kind of stiff. It's getting a little bit better. When I first removed the motor part, you can see it's kind of dirty in there. Well, the trick is to use some carb cleaner. You can use brake cleaner, but carb cleaner is more effective. What I would do is basically spray it in here and let it fill up, and just rotate this back and forth. And if you can get a Q-tip or even a small piece of wood, whatever you can get in there, and just kind of rub it on the outside of that little barrel in there. That barrel is kind of like a cup shape, and it rotates like this, and it will get the dirt off the outside and allow this to spin smooth. It's got a stiff spot right there, which this is kind of a magnet, and the motor is on the outside of it. The motor operates this. Well, when the motor is kind of, lights just went out. When the motor is old, it doesn't have as much power, it can't operate as fast. And then if there's dirt in here, it kind of accentuates the problem. It can't turn it as fast. So when the RPM comes up and it comes down, as it's coming down, this should open and allow air to bypass the throttle body and try and maintain the idle. Well, what often happens is the idle comes down, it starts to stall, this gets to its fully open position, brings the RPM back up, then it closes to try and stabilize it. So you'll kind of get that, you know, that fluctuation on the idle. It'll do this a little bit, then it'll stabilize. It's often this guy right here. Okay, so I just put some carb cleaner in this. As you see, it's dripping out on my hands. It will drip out through the seal. But if you can't find a Q-tip or you haven't got one, cut yourself a piece of wood like this. I know it sounds kind of crude, but you're surprised how well this works. And it's got a hard enough edge that you can sit and clean that, and you'll see the dirt coming off. See it coming off onto my little stick right here, and it will work pretty well. This will kind of absorb some of the carb cleaner, and it'll act like a stiff brush. You can go around there And if you kind of cut it like this, put a bit of a curve to it, kind of get around the back side of it. So if you haven't got a Q-tip, which we haven't, we don't keep Q-tips at the shop much, we can use this right here and it'll do a really good job. Go around there and clean it until this thing spins nice and free. It's already spinning better. I can spin it with one hand. Look at that, it's getting better already. All right, now just on another side note, a lot of people want to know some of the little tricks and tips we use for supercharging. Well, this is one of the things we've been doing for a long time. This stud for the Kraftwerks kit, we don't use the stud that comes in the kit. We actually buy an ARP stud right here and set it in so it's perfectly bottomed out, and then Loctite it so it can't move, so it can't bottom out and it can't turn any further. It bottoms out on the thread, but we don't want it to move. We don't want it to be tightened and run into the case. You might have seen a couple of forums where people have done that. This is just one of those other things that we do to try and add a little bit more reliability to the kit. I forgot to tell you how to uninstall this. Hopefully it was pretty self-explanatory. 2 little nuts right there, and then there is a bolt on the top and a bolt on the bottom that removes this, and of course this hose there and this hose, you're either going to have to drain the coolant or just put a clamp on these 2 hoses, because water does flow in here and it will come out. But it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure if you're going to tackle this, you know how that guy comes off. So I'm going to run our injectors on this little machine like I always do, and we're not doing an exact calculation and balance. We just want to make sure they're flowing within a reasonable amount. We want to try and balance them. And that just reminds me, I sent a set of 4 injectors to Kirk at Boost Lab, and I ain't heard from him. I'm going to go ahead and hit him up and see what's going on over there. Alright, so little injectors are set up, and I just got word back from Kurt. He said your ears must be burning because I'm flow testing them right now. So talking of flow testing, ready? Alright, come on, fuel. There's the fuel. There's the spray. Alright, perform the test. Hit record. This is going to do this for about another 45 minutes, so hopefully you're sitting comfortable, you have a nice cold drink. That's not bad, is it?
No.
That was a little low right there.
Got 78, 70, 78 and a half, and 70.
That's pretty good. 78? I mean 68.
Yeah, 68.
The other 78.
Yeah,
Now they've ran, let's do them one more go just to make sure it's cleaned out all the assembly lube that goes into these things. Alright guys, sitting comfortably. So this was not a calibrated test. We didn't calibrate the injectors. We didn't put a certain time on them and measure them. We're just measuring the fact that they're flowing even. That's all we're doing, just so we can put a disclaimer across the screen. This is not a professional balanced fuel injector. This is an eBay machine. Cost about $8 off eBay. You can get these up to 8, or I think they have a 6-cylinder version. We use a 4 because we typically run 4 injectors at a time. Again, this isn't a professional machine. This is a 50-cent machine. Price is going down each time. There we go. It's 4 o'clock. Look how delicious they look. Now, if this was an exhaust shop, George, these would have been natural ice or Busch Light.
Or at least brown glass I can weld through.
That's right. That's a welding screen. Bruce is here. I talked about this earlier. This wire that loops around here. It loops. It's like really creative. It goes under the fuse box and back and round and through here. And this thing's sitting here. We're going to change this. It looks a little goofy. So that's much cleaner. The fuse holder is down there. We tinned the end of the wires so they sit in the fuse holder correctly. The wire is rerouted along there. It is tie wrapped where it needs to be. I want to see if we can find some more clips. These always break here. We're going to see if we can do something to help hold that in place. Unfortunately, it's kind of falling apart, but we'll see what we can do. That looks cleaner already. Alright, so this is the stud that comes with the kit we talked about. There is no indication of the hardness of this bolt, so who knows, it could be a weak bolt. Does it have a number on it anywhere?
It's all thread.
It's all thread, so it's just probably a piece of basic rod. So what, like we've talked about in the past, the Kraftwerks kit, it's held on with 3 points. It's basically a mounting point here, a mounting point here that comes off this bracket here, and then obviously the stud that comes out here, which is basically all points are dual purpose points. So each 3 points, not only are they holding the bracketry and the whole kit, each one is also holding a pulley. So that's one of the reasons we're trying to increase the strength of those. There's only 3 points. We need to be as strong as possible. This, we have no idea the hardness of this, like we just said, so we changed that to an ARP. We've already talked about that. Not only do we change that to an ARP, there is a little bit more room in the head. There's about another maybe 10 or 12 millimeters, so we tap it a little deeper so we can get a longer bolt in here. The new bracket that comes with the new Kraftwerk kit is beefier than the original. It uses the 3 points of the VTEC solenoid, and then it acquires this bolt down here, so it does add quite a bit of strength. But I would recommend you change this bolt right here. Fuel pump that comes with it is a Grams. We don't use this. We always recommend you do the Walbro pump. It is by far the most reliable pump. Alright, so the Walbro pump right here. I'm going to do the install. Fuel pump, we've already talked about it. It's about there, so take the interior panels out, go in through the back. I'll show you it here in a second once I get it out, but it's pretty much the same size, direct replacement. This will support 500 horsepower, no problem. So everything has been changed back here to the different clips. So you can get one of these tools right here. You can get them off Amazon. They work really well. It's kind of like a plastic, almost like a fiber tool. You just slide this in here and just kind of ease back. And you can take these clips out without breaking them. Very, very good tool. I think the whole set was less than 20 bucks, and it has a whole range of these things. But again, push it as far as you can and just ease it back so you don't break it. Just rock it back and forth. It's obviously the wrong clip. It's really stiff in there. Look at that. But just ease it out. It says plastic. Don't break it. Don't fire it at the camera. Alright, so this is the sending unit. When it comes out as a whole assembly. The fuel pump is located in this section right here. That sock is joined onto the fuel pump right here. This has the feed and the return. This is the better system. If we're building an 06 and we want to make over 425, 430 horsepower comfortably, we change it to the sending unit and add the return line for additional fuel capacity. We've made 500 on E85, no problem at all with the return system. We've also made closer to 600 on this factory system, just with an upgraded pump, of course, return line and injectors. All right, so you'll always test the fuel pump before you button too much up, just to make sure it works. I once put a whole system together, put all the plastics back in, forgot to plug the pump into the sending unit, not this plug, the one inside of the tank, so I had to pull it all back apart. So it's always good to test it before you get too much put back together. All right, so you should be able to hear the pump. Oh yeah. Always like to hear. Oh yeah, we're good. All right, quick look at the kit right here. You're blocking the shot, George. This is the C38 92. This is the bigger one. This is good for about another 20 horsepower at the same conditions. If you set the boost the same, everything is being equal, it's about 20 horsepower more, so it is a little bit more efficient than the 81 kit. This is what it looks like. This is the stud was talking about. This is the 30mm kit. Obviously there is such controversial discussions about this kit. What do you do? Do you do it tight? Do you do it loose? Whatever. Everyone has their own opinion. Now some people are talking about measuring a bolt to get the tension, which isn't the most accurate way, because this belt is going to vary lengthwise depending on the conditions, and everything has a small factor on it, so you can't really measure the bolt. So rather than giving you the false information and everybody jumping on board and telling me that you should do it this way, should do it that way, in typical YouTube fashion, the best way to tension the belt is Alright, so Hondata is in and hooked up. We just put in a base map. When I say base map, it's a map I've used before for the same setup, so should be fairly close. You ready? Yep. bind our open head right now, just so we can start it. That is O2 sensor right there. Alright, so I've had a lot of people ask about this and go, hey, I bought it and it's loose. What do I do? This thing's loose, it doesn't stay on. Typically what we do is we either use some double-sided tape or a little bit of Honda bond. That way, if for some reason you need to service the VTEC solenoid or you need to work on it, whatever, because this bolt is kind of tight here, you can just, you know, pull this off. It will go on, but it's just not very tight. As you see, it's got a little bit of wobble to it. So a little bit of Honda bond and line it up, obviously, you know, adjust it and get this, you know, exactly perfect. Classic lemonade today. So we're going to take a quick break. Now we're working on this pipe right here. We're going to mount that muffler and get the muffler where it needs to be. Sorry, the compressor is running in the background. We're going to try and make that pipe a little rounder and then make this pipe a little bit better than, now the compressor turns off, a little bit better than what it was. Is it foamed yet?
A little bit.
Mine's got a full-on iceberg in it. Look at that.
You can start to see it.
Yeah. Iceberg right ahead. So I put them in the freezer because we forgot to put them in the fridge this morning. So I put them in the freezer for about 2 hours. Now we've got a full-on slushy on our hands. Alright, so putting the bumper back on here. This piece you saw earlier in the video had like a weird bolt holding it on. Well, it's supposed to have like a black, it's a Phillips, but it has like a little chamfer piece on the top. Whatever I'm trying to say, with a rubber gasket. Well, it was missing, so I want to replace it with these right here. This is something you see us use a lot. I really like these. Little Allen head, button head is known as, and this washer is called a fender washer. It's a 6mm washer with basically the bigger outside diameter. So, as we say in the industry, it covers up a multitude of sins. I don't know if we all say it in the industry, I do. But like this, somebody's drilled these holes larger. Somebody's wallet it out, so by doing the larger washer, it just kind of fixes that, cleans it up a little bit, kind of makes that look a little tidier. Alright, so one of the pulleys had just a little bit of wobble to it, so we have a couple of spares in stock. We're going to go ahead and change that one, let the car cool a little bit, but just the tensioner pulley down there just has a little bit of wobble to it, which we don't want, so there's a brand new one. We'll test this too. Got to check that off. We already did that because it looked terrible. All of our list is pretty much done. All we're going to do is tune. Got to let the car cool down. We're going to go ahead and eat lunch, and then there's a pulley down there that just has a little bit of this going on. We're going to go ahead and replace that and put a brand new pulley on there. We want all the pulleys to run true and as perfect as possible, but once it cools down, we'll check the coolant, make sure it's glugged all the way down. With bleeding, it should be bled out now, but as it cools, it'll sometimes pull down a little bit more. That's it. So this is a perfect time to try these. These are blue raspberry sparkling ice with caffeine. I can't wait to try one of these. You ready?
Yeah.
Good choice. That's what I was going to choose. Alright, so this one is done. It's been 96, 97 all day. This one made some pretty decent power, and again, it's a 100,000 mile motor. That's what's so amazing. This S2000 has 100,000 miles on it. Nobody really knows what kind of care and attention it's had. But stock catalytic converter, header, the exhaust that it came with that we repaired. Let me show you the power real quick. 409 and 256. For an AP1, that's pretty good. The AP1s don't make the same power as an AP2, but with a stock catalytic converter on a 100,000 mile motor, I said that's pretty good. Alright, so this car is finished, it's off the dyno, everything is good. One thing we noticed was a couple of drops of coolant right under the dyno, and it's not over here. All we did was basically put the radiator in, but what we've found is that hose down there is a little bit swollen. I'll stick the light down there, you might be able to see it better. That one there, and it's usually from oil dripping on it. It affects the rubber and makes the rubber bulge out. So we have another hose, you can kind of see near the clamp there where it's bulging out. It's the culprit's a little wet down there around it. You look at that frame rail. So that's another reason that we like a little bit more time with these than just the time it takes to put the kit on and put on the dyno. It gives us a chance to kind of assess any issues, anything that might be going on, even if it's not related to what we did. If it's something simple that we can fix and take care of, obviously one less thing the customer has to worry about.
Alright, so here's the new hose for the block to the oil cooler. This is what the original one looked like. If you put them close to each other, you can see one's growing a little bit, and that's what oil does too. Your VTEC solenoid, your TCT, anything leaking on that side of the engine, valve cover, anything leaking down there getting onto this hose will eventually do that to the hose. It makes it sticky and a bit more squishy. This is a much more solid hose. But yeah, that's what it'll do to them.